Welcome to Whiz, your family-friendly podcast where we discuss D&D Onslaught, Dice Masters, HeroClix, and the other entertaining games made by WizKids. I'm WizDad, the tournament scenario you were hoping not to see. I will be your guide for navigating the competitive and casual scenes of the WizKids Triforce of gaming. It's Onslaught Wednesday. Today we are digging deep into the Zhentarim and break down some other things that are coming up in the Onslaught world. So let's start by hopping into the WizKids Progress Report.
Kowalski, Progress Report.
Last week, I talked about the Frogmire Coven expansion that should be coming out for Onslaught in October. I did fail to mention that Onslaught's first storyline OP pack is also coming in October. If you're not familiar with how WizKids does storyline OP packs, they've done them for HeroClix for a few years. That basically it is a multi-week event where you get one or sometimes multiple basically OP kits for your store that allows you to run an event that goes for, like I said, multiple weeks. And they can either build up into each other or they can ultimately they lead to some sort of grand prize. As for D&D Onslaught, they have the Storyline OP Pack 1 Ancient Construct. It is a 6-week storyline event. Per their website, in the first week, players will get the base Grappler, that's in quotations, Grappler, version of a high-detailed pre-painted construct miniature with detachable torso, head, and arms, along with its matching dial card. In additional weeks, players will get new ability cards and sets of parts such as head, arms, or accessories, you can see where they're going, that they can swap or add to their figure to create a variant matching its new abilities. These variants include Defender, Arbalist, Soldier, Mage, and Apothecary. Interesting. A single set allows a player to build one version of a construct at a time. As they collect pieces, they will build new scenarios featuring the ancient construct, and at the end of the storyline, the player with the best record will win an exclusive version of a Conke, the Goblin Artificer. Each kit is intended for 4 players and includes 4 complete sets of ancient construct parts and components and 1 prize figure and components. Now, I don't know what the price is. I know that it's set to come out in October, so it's supposed to be kind of like your October, November storyline OP kit to kind of get you through the winter months. Sounds very, very cool. I know I'm going to ask my store to order one. I'm working on trying to build a local group. I don't know if anyone else is having a little bit of an issue with that with the price point, but it is good to see that WizKids is already rolling out storyline OP events. Because obviously this kind of storyline OP event doesn't necessarily mean it leads itself to competitive. It means that it's, once again, this game is kind of competitive and casual at the same time. So definitely check with your store. Check the solicits with Alliance. It is available for them to go ahead and, I believe it's available. I found this on the solicit. So go ahead and put in that order. The kit, once again, supports 4 players. So you might need multiple if you have a big enough group. But otherwise, that's all we've got in line thus far. I anticipate that we won't really see much more in what Onslaught has to offer until Worlds. So with that, that's going to end the progress report. Let's just go ahead and hop into Fishing with WizDad.
Get your gear, little man. We're going fishing. And I mean now.
The Zhentarim. Many still remember them as the Black Network, a mercenary group that served the Dark Gods Bane and Cyric. The Zhentarim found success in dealing illicit goods and contraband, and moving that product all over Faerun. With a massive network of over 25,000 agents, the threat of combining that power into one army has made the Zhentarim a global power that no one has properly stood up against. Do you have the tactical prowess and moral fortitude to lead this dark faction? Currently, the Zhentarim have 10 available characters that you can add to your faction. My goal with Fishing with WizDad for this episode is to go through all 10, talk about their abilities, what role they kind of fill, well, the role and their role in different scenarios. I will not really be covering sellswords that could replace them. I will do a separate episode to talk about sellswords for all the available factions. So to kick things off, we're going to talk about the 2 tacticians on the team. That is Dayu Tzeng. Sorry, I am probably going to mispronounce a lot of these names. Dayu Zeng the Bard, and Javika the Flowing Maple the Monk. As opposed to her Harper counterpoint, her fellow Bard, Chloe, Dayu really buys into the what is the Bard subclass? The College of Whispers, I feel like. Gains a little bit of that aspect. She has your standard attack, funny enough. 1 enemy at range, 1, +7 to hit, 1 damage. Her range attack is 1 enemy at range, 2 to 4, +5 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, increase the cooldown of one of the target's once per game cooldown dials by 1. So basically you're making your opponent have to cool down 1 more turn longer. That is already significant. For her critical, it is +1 damage and then refresh Words of Terror. We'll get to that. This is a very key ability. At the Skulker, at the start of your activation, gain stealth if there are no enemies at range 1 to 3. Stealth is very much I feel like one of the more powerful abilities statuses in the game. So the fact that she just gets it if there are no enemies within 3 is pretty clutch. She has a 4 movement, 14 armor, defense, whatever, and 9 health. So she has the leg up on Chloe. I believe Chloe was an 8. Her 2 abilities, bonus action is Feign Death, bonus action, 4 turn cooldown, gain Invisible and Rooted. You cannot take move actions. So, pretty good. What's better than Stealth? Invisible. Words of Terror, standard action. It could be only used once per game. Choose 1 space in range 2 to 4, +5 to hit. I believe it has a splash zone of 1. I may be reading that wrong. It's a very small picture. It deals 1 damage. If hit, the target gains Dazed. If missed, the target gains Weakened. So very much playing into status effects. And then Mantle of Whispers. It's a once per game effect. After the enemy character is killed, KO'd, gain its close and ranged attack or actions basically until the end of the scenario. So basically whatever capabilities, standard range that they can use, she gets to use it. So that's kind of neat. There's some pretty good ones out there. Javika the Flowing Maple, the Monk. Close is a standard, 1 enemy at range, +6 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, target gains slowed, so movement becomes 2. That's huge. Movement is very important in this game. And you'll see why more in just a little bit, but it is very much an important stat in this game. From range, just 2 to 3, +4 to hit, just 1 damage. Critical, she deals 1 more damage, and then you may move up to your speed. So that's pretty good. Mobility, enemies cannot make opportunity attacks after your moves. So that's clutch for her first ability. First off, though, she has a 5 movement, so she is speedy. 5 is the good speed. You want people with 5. Defensive 14, and she has 11 health. First ability is Flurry of Blows, standard. Make a close attack against all adjacent enemies. Every target is a separate attack, and it's a cooldown of 3. So that's very good, especially tied in with mobility, being able for her to kind of go in there, kind of lay a melee AoE, if you will, dealing damage to everyone. That is pretty good. And then she has stun, which takes a standard and a movement. It's once per game. One enemy at range 1, +6 to hit. It deals 2 damage, and the target gains stunned. They cannot take any actions. So kind of a, I'm going to shut down this character for a turn. The reaction is a deflect missiles after you're hit with a range. That was not a cone attack, essentially, or a splash attack, or critical success. Change that hit to a miss. I think we've seen that on a few other pieces. So when you're playing a tactician, once again, you don't have to, obviously, but these are the two you have to choose between. It really depends on your scenario, which one you would choose. If you need more of a melee fighter, obviously Javika is the one you want to go with, because she could really get in there, shut some people down, get in people's faces. But I don't know, Dayu is being the stealthy tactician that she could be is pretty, or he could be. I actually don't know which one in this instance. Is pretty clutch. Like, I played against them because there's a lot of Zhentarim in Gen Con. And Dayu was not someone to be trifled with. I didn't go over their level up abilities. They're both good. For Dayu, gain 1 XP after your activation if you were not damaged this round. So if she's stealthed and invisible, I mean, Dayu is probably not getting hit. Probably not taking damage. And then Javika gets +1 after you use a cooldown ability. So that is... that's pretty good too. Not nearly as good, but you could probably get Dayu to the level up. Pretty well, I guess, in a couple turns. Now moving on to the melee damage. There's 2. There's Shabelle the Life Sever. Is a fighter. Does not have a ranged attack, only has a standard close attack. Great sword. 1 enemy at range 1, +4 to hit, 3 damage. 3 damage is good for a standard. Critical, +1 to damage. Reduce the cooldown of each of your cooldown dials by 1. That's solid. 4 movement, 15 defense, and 11 hit points. I'll go ahead and go here. The level up ability for Shabelle is gain 1 XP after you cause an enemy to become wounded, or bloodied, I should say, or dead. And dealing 3 damage, that's going to happen. The cooldown abilities is Disarming Strike, bonus action, cooldown of 3. Make a close attack. If it hits, the target suffers no damage and gains disarmed. They can't make basic attacks. And that's a bonus action, so that's good. Being able to run in there and kind of disarm your opponent. Then you have Stone's Endurance, bonus action, 5-turn cooldown. Gain Stone's Endurance. What do you know? You ignore the first successful attack against you, then discard this token. So you definitely, Shabelle is your, I'm going to run in there, try to tie up some pieces, try to start dealing some damage and make them have to deal with you. He can Stone Endurance. He can make them not be able to attack. He's very good for close. But then you have his counterpart. La Sayel. I guess that's right. La Sayel du Arathmier is a rogue. We know everybody loves rogues. Short sword, 1 enemy at range 1, +5 to hit, 2 damage. Standard. Hand crossbow, 1 enemy, range 2 to 4, +4 to hit, 1 damage. Makes sense, right? Critical, +1 damage. After the attack, you may make a close attack, so cool. You could theoretically, I believe, just keep making attacks if you keep hitting criticals. So thank goodness he's not on a team with Sedona, because that could get nutty. He's also got sneak attack, +1 damage with your your short sword attack. If a friendly character is adjacent to your target, +1 damage with your range if you have cover from your target. Okay, so increasing that damage to a 3 and a 2. Very solid. 5 movement, which is huge. I'll get to why in a second. 14 defense, 10 health. 10 health is a little surprising for a rogue. Level up, gain 1 XP after an adjacent enemy character is KO'd. Solid. The 2 cooldown abilities. Hide in Shadows is a free action with a cooldown of 2. Gain Stealth. You cannot be targeted by non-adjacent enemies if you have cover from them. Solid. Super solid. And then here's the biggie. Cunning action. Bonus. 5 turn cooldown. Move up to your speed. Enemies can't take reactions after this move. So you might be thinking, WizDad, why all that is a bonus action to move farther? Well, with a 5 movement, that means he can move 10 for just a move action and a bonus action. That is key in certain tournament scenarios. I witnessed it firsthand because he can definitely get to a lot of loot very quickly. He can move 10 squares, which is significant. So there is the realm of possibility where you play him and you immediately say, I'm just going to move 10 squares and then take an action, take my standard action, move it down to a bonus to be able to open the chest or something along those lines. So he definitely has the capabilities of just moving so fast, which not a lot of other factions can do that. Harpers don't have that flexibility for sure. The reaction is just opportunity attack. That's pretty standard across a lot of different melee people. So if you needed melee damage, it's really going to be dependent on scenario. I feel like Lasalle is gonna be on your team, at least gonna be on your list of 7 because of that mobility. Getting loot is very important in games. I learned that firsthand. Being able to equip some of these equipments that you have from the base set and the benefactor set is very, very good and can change how the game is played. Let me reiterate, it's not earth-shattering. It's not as if the game is going to be unplayable. It's not as if, he gets that loot, game over. It's more of, okay, well, it's what enables a lot more things. Chabelle also, like we just talked about, the fighter, is not bad either. I think probably one of the better close-range people in the Zhentarim. But let's talk about that with the next set of Zhentarim. And that is going to be your Vanguard. We'll start with Rubii Doirine, the Barbarian. Great Axe attack, 1 enemy at range, 1, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. Critical, just 2 more damage. Reckless Abandon, while you are bloodied, your standard attack gains plus 1 damage. Very, very basic. This card probably has one of the least amount of words on it than any other character card. Here's the bummer with Rubii. 3 movement, 14 defense, 12 health. Rubii does have the level up ability of gain 1 XP after you deal damage with Spiked Retribution, which we will get to. The 2 cooldown abilities is Charge, cooldown of 3, standard action, move up to your speed to make an attack, which is great because gonna need it with a 3 movement. That means you can move 6 and attack. That's okay. Battle Rage, bonus action, once per game, gain Enraged and Intimidating. While attacking, enemies must target you if able. So that is big. That is big. That you have to go after Rubii. The problem is Rubii is very, very slow. Now, there may be equipment that can mitigate that. Sure. The reaction, Spiked Retribution, which ties into the level up ability. After you are damaged by an adjacent enemy, it suffers 1 damage. So very cool kind of tie-in with that. The other Vanguard is Barachiel. Who's a paladin. Great sword, standard attack, 1 enemy at range, plus 5 to hit, 2 damage. I'm kind of used to that. Critical, plus 1 damage, and the target gains slowed. Their movement drops to 2. 4 movement, so a little better. 17 defense, that's good. 13 health. So that's the highest we've seen, I believe. That's higher than Shabelle. That's higher than Ruby Eye. And actually, it is the most on the faction is 13. So he's got high defense and high health and 4 movement too, which isn't bad. 2 cooldown abilities. Oh, sorry, the level up first. Gain 1 XP after you are attacked by an enemy. He might get attacked. 17 is not great to have to roll against, but you know, it's pretty easy to hit sometimes in this game. The 2 cooldown abilities, bonus action, 5 turn cooldown, magic weapon. Gain magic weapon. Cut and dry. You gain +1 to hit and damage, and with your close attack, and it... Wait, let me reread that. You gain +1 to hit and +1 damage with your close attack, and it is now a magic attack instead of a physical attack. That was kind of wordy. Smite. 1 enemy at range 1. This is a 3-turn cooldown. +5 to hit. 3 damage. If hit, target gains slowed. So Barachiel also has combat reflexes. If after an enemy moves, they're no longer adjacent, make an attack against them. But Barachiel is definitely kind of the meat stick of the group. Can get in there. Not really high damage like Shabelle. But with magic weapon, you know, you got a turn where you could do some things if you need be. But definitely a good get in their face and just dare them to attack you because they're the only ones there. Out of the 2 Vanguards, if I'm playing, I'm honestly debating whether I'm going to play a Vanguard at all. I'm not that big of a fan of either. Now, that's just me. I haven't played a lot of Zhentarim yet. But just looking at these 2 compared to the rest of them, I feel like if I need the close tie-up pieces, there's better ones. Ruby Eye, I would give the slight edge over Barachiel, only because of the intimidating factor. But after that, Ruby Eye is just so slow. Let's talk about hybrid now. We've got 4 more to go, guys. Bedlam. The Warlock. Pact Blade, standard. 1 enemy at range, +5 to hit, 2 damage. Surprise. Eldritch Blast as the range. 1 enemy at range, 2 to 5, +4 to hit, 2 damage. Critical, +1 damage. If attacking with a close attack, you can heal 1. That's cool. 4 movement, 12 defense, 10 health. So a little low on the defense, but that's a Warlock for you, right? Gain 1 XP at the end of your activation. That is good. That means every time they activate, Bedlam is gaining 1 XP. That's pretty darn good. The 2 cooldown abilities, Strike takes a standard and bonus. 3-turn cooldown, Make a close attack. It gains an additional +3 to hit and +1 damage. That's okay. It's not as good as like a double up attack like Hingaku has, but it's okay. Curse is the other one. Bonus action, you get to do it once per game. 1 enemy character or champion at range 1 to 3 to gain Cursed. After the bearer of Cursed is KO'd, heal 3 and refresh Curse. So it's hopefully not once per game, but if you never take out the cursed person, it could potentially be once per game. The reaction is after you were damaged, deal an equal amount of damage to the attacker. So that's real good, because Bedlam has 10 health, so that means potentially dealing 10 health. Well, not 10 health, but like dealing damage to someone is always good. Now, if they got multi-attack, they might attack you with someone weak and maybe do 2 damage, and then you have to decide, am I dealing 2 damage? Either way, just not having to roll to deal damage, kind of like with combat reflexes or opportunity attack, being able to just say, hey, I was damaged in this, I'm going to deal that damage to you as well, is very good. So good that it has a 5-turn cooldown. But Bedlam is solid, I guess. I believe this is kind of the... Well, Pact Blade is the standard. So it's a Warlock with the Pact Blade subclass. But Bedlam kind of falls for me in that... I mean, I want Bedlam to get up in there, but I don't know if I really want to. 12 defense is really low. Like, with a +5 to hit on most attacks, you're probably hitting a 12. Especially with 2d20s. But on the flip side, you got Vonkar Zazad. I know it's probably Zazad, who's a cleric. Vonkar has standard attack flail, one enemy at range 1, +4 to hit, 1 damage. If hit, the target gains bleeding. They suffer 1 irreducible damage at the start of their activation. Okay, that's cool. 1 damage and then continued damage. Okay. The range is Toll the Dead. 1 enemy at range 2 to 3, +4 to hit, 2 damage. Alright, solid so far. Critical, +1 damage, and you may remove a condition token from the target. Alright. Spiritual Weapon. So this is kind of like an extra ability. It takes a bonus action. Activate a Spiritual Weapon at range 0 to 5. We'll get to Spiritual Weapon here in just a second. The Vonkar has a 4 movement, so same as Bedlam. 16 defense, 10 health. So basically just 4 more defense than Bedlam has. Vonkar's gains 1 XP after your Spiritual Weapon deals damage. Now remember, it's a bonus action to activate the Spiritual Weapon within 5. So that's fine. The 2 cooldown abilities, one is Aid, so that's kind of the first heal that we've seen thus far for the Zhentarim, which is pretty clutch. Heal is very good. Bonus action, 3 turn cooldown, 1 friendly character at ranges 0 to 2, heal 3. So very good. And then we have Spiritual Weapon. So here it is. Summon a Spiritual Weapon in a space at range 0 to 3. It's a standard action. You can only do it once per game, so you get 1 Spiritual Weapon. Before we talk about the Spiritual Weapon, the reaction is just Opportunity Attack. So that one is just kind of your standard Opportunity Attack. So Spiritual Weapon. Let's talk about that. It has a 3 movement, 3 speed, I should say. And it's got Slam, standard physical attack, 1 enemy at range 1, +3 to hit, 1 damage. So you could take a bonus action to activate that. Spiritual Weapon has Spectral. Spiritual Weapon cannot be targeted, damaged, or affected by any abilities. It does not occupy a space. So effectively, Vonkar is able to, as long as he stays kind of within 5 of his Spiritual Weapon, is able to run around, hit somebody for 1, potentially giving him bleeding. Also have his Spiritual Weapon nearby who can also potentially hit. Now it's a +3, it's not great. But if the Spiritual Weapon hits, and Vonkar hits, he's leveling up pretty quickly. And I know I haven't covered up level up abilities, but Vonkar's is like if he levels up, he can get his Spiritual Weapon to deal 2 damage and a +5 to hit. So his Spiritual Weapon could get stronger. So to be perfectly honest, if I'm choosing a hybrid at this point, I know it varies on scenario. I like Vonkar much more than I like Bedlam, but it depends on the scenario, right? I think Vonkar brings a lot to the table because not only can Vonkar heal, but has access to multiple ways of damaging. It's pretty solid. Like, that's solid to me. It's definitely a hybrid role. I like having some of my attackers have access to healing, and that's great. I also like the fact that, if Vonkar can't make basic attacks, like if he gets disarmed or something like that, he can still make a bonus action for the Spiritual Weapon to do it. So he gets around some of those limiting factors. Finally, we've got the last 2. The last 2 do not have the same role. Roxy, or Rock Pyrotrix, the Clanless, is a sorcerer. Ranged attacker, essentially. Dagger, 1 enemy at range 1, +5 to hit, 2 damage. Shocker. Guess what? It's the same thing for Firebolt, 1 enemy at range 2 to 5, +5 to hit, 2 damage. Critical, +1 damage, and you may reduce the cooldown of each of your cooldown dials by 1. That's very key, because Rocky has some kind of high cooldown abilities. Dragon Blood. After you suffer damage, reduce the cooldown of each of your cooldown dials by 1. Cool. 4 movement, 13 defense, 9 health. And I should mention, there's no one on this team that has 8. 9 is the minimum for Zhentarim. Harpers have 8. I believe it's Chloe that has 8. Or Sedona. Maybe Sedona that has 8. The 2 level up ability, gain 1 XP after you defeat an enemy character. Okay, that's maybe coming up. 2 cooldown abilities, Burning Hands, standard. 5 turn cooldown. It's a cone of 3, so that covers a lot. +7 to hit, 3 damage. So that's high damage hitting in a cone. If you're playing against Rocky, you want to avoid stacking your people together. Because if they don't hit with Burning Hands, they also have Fireball. Standard, 5 turn cooldown. Choose a space at range 2 to 5, +6 to hit. It has a splash zone of 1 and deals 2 damage. Luckily, they can't combo that in 1 turn, but either way, a fire sorcerer to the extreme. Cooldown. The reaction ability is opportunity attack. Pretty standard. Rocky is definitely kind of the main damage dealer, or just there for damage. Doesn't really have any other utility outside of I'm going to deal a lot of damage to someone in a small space. So maybe more beneficial for deathmatch. Control point type scenarios are good too, because obviously you want to have a lot of people on a control point. So having Rocky there might be good to be able to move up and just start blasting your opponent and dealing 3 damage to a lot of their team is pretty solid. The final piece we have for Zhentarim is a healer, Mistral, who is a cleric. Mace, 1 enemy at range 1, +4 to hit, 2 damage. Sacred Flame is the range, 1 enemy at 2 to 3, +5 to hit, 1 damage. Critical, +1 damage. After the attack, you may exchange places with the target. That's kind of cool. 4 movement, 15 defense, 11 health. Gain 1 XP after you heal a target to its maximum. I wonder how it's going to heal people. Cure Wounds is the cooldown ability. Standard, 5 turn cooldown. That's a little steep, but you'll see why. Target 1 friendly at range 0 to 5, heal them 5. The next one is pretty key too. It makes Mistral not bad to also pick up loot. Pass without a trace, bonus action. 5 turn cooldown. Make basically a warp, a phase of 3. So that means they go through walls, ignore elevation. They just teleport 3 essentially. And then the cooldown, or the reaction I should say, is Invoke Duplicity, 3 turn cooldown. After you're hit by attack, reduce the attack's damage by 2. Mistral. This one, Mistral's a little tricky for me. This is obviously the cleric subclass of Trickster. Or Trickery domain, I should say. Mistral's a little tricky for me, because Cure Wounds is great, but it's also got a long turn. So you're really ideally only getting it off once. After that, you got Pass Without a Trace once, because it's also a 5 turn. But then that's kind of it. Mistral doesn't do much outside of that big heal. Even if you level Mistral up and use some of the abilities like Mirror Image or Blessing of the Trickster, that doesn't give a lot more functionality. So Mistral, compared to the Harper's healer, which I believe was Chloe, doesn't feel as good, according to me. Which, what do I know? But the key thing with the Zhentarim as a whole is the fact that they have, I think, a higher average hit point than the Harpers. And I'm comparing directly to the Harpers because they're the ones in the core set. They have a lot more, very thematically, ways to deal you status conditions. And until people get used to status conditions, that's going to be a very big benefit. Being able to give yourself stealth, like multiple characters giving themselves stealth, being able to give out stunned, weakened, dazed, stone's endurance, enraged, intimidating. There's so many status effects with the Zhentarim. Having one of the fastest characters in the game, I think actually Lasael is the fastest character potentially in the game, is huge for certain scenarios where you need to pick up loot or get to someplace first. Their close attackers are solid. Like, they have essentially 4, or should I say tankier people, I should say, is, Shabelle, Ruby Eye, Barishiel, even Vonkar a little bit. All solid. If I were to build a team, once again, let's just fall to the default, because I don't want to try to cover every scenario. That might be better for another episode. But if we were going to talk about a team deathmatch, for example, if I was building just a pure deathmatch team, who would I pick? I'd probably pick Javika as my tactician. I'd probably go with... I might go with Shabelle. So the easy ones for me is probably Javika, Vonkar, because I like the spiritual weapon. Vonkar also gives you the heal at a faster rate than Mistral. I would then probably consider Lasael, just to be able to get me some of the equipment, the treasure out there. That's pretty clutch as well. So that's 3. At that point, I would debate about whether I want Bedlam or Rocky. Probably leaning more Rocky for just the pure damage aspect of it. And then I would have to really debate on... at that point, I think that would be basically it. It was because I have Javika, Lasael, Barishiel, Vonkar. So it'd probably be Rocky at that point. That would be my 5. Depending on what faction I'm going against, maybe sub out Rocky for Dayu if I want to be able to... if it's something that might have a lot of cooldowns that I want to make a little bit longer. Maybe kind of play more of the status game. Though I feel like Dayu probably isn't the best for deathmatch. So maybe just leaning Rocky. So let's just say Javika, Lasael, did I say Barishiel? Let me try that again. Javika, Lasael, Vonkar, Rocky. Oh yeah, so it's either be Ruby Eye or Barishiel. I would probably lean more Barishiel at that point. But it also would depend on what faction they're playing, I guess. So either way, I don't feel I would be reaching for Mistral unless it's a kind of covert ops, I need to move type scenario. I don't know if I'm reaching for Dayu for the same reason. I feel like I'm always reaching for Lasael, but Shabelle might be better if it's pure deathmatch. This is a little bit tricky because there are a lot of scenarios, and there's a lot of scenarios we're not going to know for upcoming tournaments. But either way, Zhentarim is a very interesting faction. It's pretty well rounded. You can definitely feel the thematic sense of the Zhentarim baked into the characters, being the kind of black network behind the scenes, dealing a lot of different statuses. They're not flashy. They're definitely in there and out, and I love that about the faction. Next episode, we will probably cover... I'm probably going after Red Wizards. That's probably what I want to talk about next. Maybe Many Arrows. I'm not sure. We've only got 3 more factions to go through. Sellswords will be its own episode because they could fit into all of these other pieces. So there might be a Sellsword that I want in here instead. But we'll save Sellswords for the last. So I'm thinking Red Wizards will be next week's episode. We'll go through all the characters that are available. We'll kind of talk about their roles, what's good about them, kind of their strengths and weaknesses, at least what I have perceived them to be. I have not played a lot of Red Wizards. I don't own Red Wizards currently, but they are on my buy list. So maybe I'll go ahead and pick those up ahead of next week. But that'll do it for this episode of Whiz. Thanks for sticking around for Onslaught Wednesday. This has been a blast to go over the Zhentarim, and I cannot wait to talk about the Red Wizards. So yeah, you guys have a wonderful day. See you next time.